Hello, everyone. Let's see. I am going to go into the group and make sure that this is actually working. But for those of you who are joining us, we have a very special presentation for you. So since I'm doing this, let's see. So I haven't done this to a private group only before. And so I know that there's a little bit of an issue, and we don't have any people watching yet, but that's okay. We've had an issue before with comments showing up and being attributed. So, okay, yay, good. We have 3 people watching. We have 4 people watching. Hello, hello, hello. Wonderful. This is going to be a very special presentation this evening. We've got the wonderful and amazing folks from Marsfall here. My internet is just being super slow, which is fine. It's fine. So yeah, we'll give this just a couple minutes and let people kind of come into the stream and get comfortable, get yourself a beverage. Oh, good. Hey, I'm watching. I'm someone. Wonderful, wonderful. Hello, hi, good. Oh, okay, this is wonderful. Hello, everyone. So I was saying a little bit earlier that usually when you type comments into these streams, I can see who you are and all of that good stuff. But today, since we're just doing it to the Seriously Successful Podcasters Facebook group, you're all coming in as simply Facebook user. So if you want me to know who you are, let me know in your comments. I know that's kind of awkward, but that's going to be our workaround for today. So awesome. Okay. Let's see. We've got people coming in. If you're watching this, let us know who you are if you want to. Otherwise, you can just lurk like a creeper. That's fine too. I do my fair share of lurking. Yeah, we'll give this just about another few minutes. Erik and Sam, welcome. I'm very glad you're here.
Really glad to be here too. Thanks for having us, Sarah.
Thanks so much.
Thank you for being here. Yeah. Oh, sorry, I interrupted you because I'm rude.
No worries. Thanks so much.
Yeah, I'm in New York. Sam is in Michigan. You know, Sarah is in South Dakota. There's going to be probably some lag issues here and there.
A little bit. So let's see. I would love for you guys to go ahead and just let us know a little bit about yourselves, a little bit about Marsfall, and yeah, just spend a few minutes introducing yourself, and then we'll get into the presentation I'm so excited about.
Great. Is the slideshow displaying? I just wanted to be sure because I can't see anything from my end.
It is. It says music in podcasting, and then it says Erik, Perfect. And then it says Sam.
Perfect. Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to Music in Podcasting. As Sarah said, I'm Erik. I'm one of the co-creators of Marsfall. I'm the primary writer and also director on that show. And we're just like really excited to be here to talk to you about music in podcasting because it's like a rapidly growing medium that, especially in fiction shows, we're hearing more original music with main themes and also music that's like put into the episodes. So even though I'm a writer and director on the show, my background is completely from music. And so when Sam and I were creating the show with our other partners, music has always just been a really important part of Marsfall. So that's a little bit about me. How about you, Sam?
Hi, everybody. I'm Sam. I'm one of the other co-creators. I voice act one of the main characters, Chip Heddleston, and I wrote all the original music for the show. The composer, this is my first main stage kind of big compositional work, along with our first podcast that we produced. And yeah, it's been an incredible learning experience, and Erik and I can't wait to share what we've learned with you all.
Awesome. So Sarah, should we dive right in then?
Yes, there we go. I had muted my mic so that all these sirens and ambulances going past my house would not disrupt you in any way. So yes, if you want to just go ahead and dive in, what I'm going to do on my end is just hang out over here on the Facebook side of things. And so if people have questions, if they have comments, I'll go ahead and just keep track of those. And then we'll do just a big Q&A at the very end, if that works for you.
Perfect. Yeah, that's how we'd love to do it. No.
Well, cool. Then I will mute myself and disappear for a little while and give you guys the floor. And thank you again so much for being here.
Of course. Yeah. And yeah, we don't obviously have the luxury of muting ourselves. So for those of you who weren't here right at the beginning, I'm in the New York City area, so you'll probably hear barking dogs and sirens and all sorts of stuff from time to time. So apologies in advance. Yeah, moving on to why is music important for podcasts? This is the essential question for podcasts. So Sam, you want to take it away on that one?
Yeah, it elevates emotions. It really connects people to the emotional content of each scene, and I think that you're already down one sense since we're missing the visual, and so to create a soundscape, like a visual landscape, um, anything that you can contribute extra on top of um, what we're giving you with sound effects design and of course with the script, the descriptive language in the script, the music can really connect you to those emotional qualities of the show. And um, ideally, ideally, fans will want to buy your soundtrack. Amazingly enough, sometime down the road, we had our first soundtrack sale 2 years after we put it up on Bandcamp. So it's going well. That was literally a week and a half ago. So. Um, but no, that's actually a passive revenue stream that you can think about from a show running standpoint. That once it's created, then it then becomes something that can be, like I said, a passive revenue stream. You can put it up on something like Bandcamp, and it can bring your listeners back to the sort of the land of your podcast, but with the OST, with the soundtrack itself.
Yeah, we always like thought about this when we were writing our show that, it's almost like TV for your ears. And I love what you said, Sam, about, that we're down a sense when we're listening to a podcast. And, I ask all of you out there listening to this right now, think of your favorite movie or TV show. And I'm sure, you're able to remember specific scenes and picture stuff. And so what we like to think about with music is that not only is it, a way to introduce people to your show, like through a main theme, but it can also like help build out a whole kind of like, audio landscape for your listeners to really get lost in those worlds. And I think this is particularly effective in science fiction and fantasy, but certainly, very helpful to any kind of show. And on that kind of note, we're gonna yeah, on that note, sorry, it's gonna happen eventually. It's probably gonna happen a lot, so I'm gonna enjoy it. We are gonna talk about tone of the show, and when we think about how we're gonna use music, similar to shooting something with a camera in a visual medium, a lot about the setting that we can build is going to support the tone of your show. So, like I was saying, lots of fantasy epics like Lord of the Rings, or science fiction epics like Star Trek or Star Wars. Certainly the Marvel comic films. I mean, they have these beautiful, lush landscapes, and they're also supported by a score. And that score sets the tone for all of those different sources of media, I guess, of like different visual things. So why not apply that to podcasts? And we just really want to think about, when we put a song up against a topic, that we want that song to kind of support that topic. And we're gonna get like further into the details on that. But right out of the gate, what you need to know as a podcast creator is, what is the tone of your show? And I bet all of you can answer if you're a creator. Is it comedy? Is it horror? Is it sci-fi, etc.? And that's going to be the first step to starting to understand what music will help emphasize the tone.
Yeah, and to build off of that too, Erik, the music that emphasizes your show, you can find in pre-existing media, right? If you're really, really drawn, let's say your show's an action adventure podcast, and you're really drawn to the movie Gladiator for some reason, right? It's Oscar winning, and you're really drawn to Hans Zimmer for some reason, the composer who wrote that. Then maybe listen to the instruments that he's using in that show, and maybe if it fits the overall kind of tone, literally what we're talking about right here, if it suits the tone of the show, then maybe those instruments will be fantastic for that. And yeah, go ahead, Erik.
Oh no. Well, I just everything you're saying. I was just gonna say it's also accessible to anyone, whether you have a background in music or not. If you're a composer watching this, definitely shout out in the comments. We love to know if there are any musicians out there. But yeah, if you've never done anything with music, I guarantee you can pull up one of your favorite movies, and if you listen really closely to the music, because you're probably watching this for the 10th time, you can just kind of zone everything out and tune into the music and be like, wow, there's something there that maybe I didn't realize, and maybe that will work really well for my show. Or maybe music like this is also part of other shows and genres I like, because there tends to be a little bit of a signature that we'll hear in our ears that will support this tone.
I'm going to hop in just real quick.
Yeah.
One of our podcasting members here actually works for Hans Zimmer and just said, yeah, Hans is a pretty good composer in the comments. So
yeah, he's all right. Yeah.
Just wanted to throw that in. He's decent. I don't know.
He's done a couple of things, right? Well, that's great. I'm really glad. We won't be going like too of a deep dive. If any composers want to stick around for a couple hours afterward, we can do the long presentation. But hopefully, everybody's gonna find out some cool new stuff here to connect music more with podcasting. So yeah, why don't we move forward, Sam? You want to talk about finding our music?
Yeah. So sometimes this can feel like a really daunting subject for somebody like a director or a writer who's never had any contact whatsoever with a musician, or let alone with a composer. I mean, I find that hard to believe that you've never had any contact with a musician in your life. but a composer maybe not. And so sometimes we attach like different ideas to what a composer is or who a composer is. But you can find people everywhere, and including if you just ask around, especially with the people you're already working with. Ask your artist friends, ask your sound engineers, the people that we've listed here, educational institutions that are close to you. Obviously, right now is a rough time for a lot of students in school, but it might be a really great time to snatch somebody up who's got all this creative energy and doesn't have a place to put it right now, and has nothing but time for the next 3 months. And they would really want to work on creating the tone and the overall sound for your show. Social media is a pretty easy way to reach out. Reddit, we are the music makers. That's a specific subreddit within Reddit. There's all kinds of things that you can do. Using existing music gets a little trickier. I worked in licensing and registration for copyright for a music publishing company when I was living in New York City, and so even I, with a lot of this knowledge, kind of stay away from that as much as I possibly can, unless it's like an indie band or somebody that you really. I mean, look, heck, you can ask anybody. You can always ask anybody. If you find somebody's contact information or you find their agent, you can reach out to them. No problem. No problem. Be respectful. Be respectful of their time and tell them what you're working on, and just be open about collaboration with your art. But all that anybody could say is no. But if you're going to use something that's pre-existing, just know that there's probably a price attached to it. And so, especially if you're producing this on an indie podcaster's budget, which is, we all probably know, is less than nothing, you're probably going to want to try to find something that's as close to free or collaborative as possible. That's ideally who you want to be working with, is somebody who wants to be as invested in this art as you are.
Yeah, I love what you're saying about collaboration. I mean, there's something really magical about working in podcasts that can be very similar to working in television or film, or if you're a musician, like playing with a chamber group where you have several different people that are bringing their unique talents to your production or to your performance. And it's just like a real treat, I think it is, to work with other people. I know there are lots of you out there that are powerhouses, that write everything, that voice everything, that edit everything. I mean, it's incredible. And I know there are so many shows that also start out that way and then slowly grow out. And it's just like when you do work with anyone else, whether it's even just one, voice actor that is like working with you as a writer, or if you are just a writer and a voice actor and you just have, a friend or editor that's reading your scripts. I mean, any kind of that is just like collaboration. And for me personally, like even, I can be definitely introverted at times, but the collaboration I feel like is such a refueling. And musicians, I think, are really fun people to collaborate with. And like Sam was saying, it's just like you can find them around and you can always be respectful and ask, and the worst thing that happens is that somebody says no. But in general, I asked Sam if he was like excited to, partner on a production that inherently doesn't come with any music. That's not something that's a given with most podcasts and people create them. And he was really excited to do it. And, luckily we're both co-creators, but even if your musician is just strictly writing music for you, that is definitely a juicy collaboration that you don't want to miss out on. Because I'm sure a lot of you that have made a show have definitely made strong friendships with actors or other writers and people like that. So why not throw a musician into the mix if you haven't already? And it can always be something simple to start with too. We're not talking about that you need someone to be like your dedicated composer and lay down everything for an entire show. But, reaching out to a friend or colleague that makes music just to, do a theme or maybe just do a special song for one of your episodes could be like a real treat and a very, very affordable thing to help another artist and collaborate on something really cool to share with all your friends and fans. And lastly, if you're not going to directly collaborate with someone, or if all this seems like a little overwhelming, that's totally normal. The very last thing you can see on this slide is something called podcast packs. And there are people out there that are composers. Two names that come to mind are Stephen Mellon and Lee Rosevere. But they put together these basically music packs that include a bunch of songs of varying genres that might be anywhere from 1 minute to a couple minutes. And what you do is you can buy that pack for them, and that's paying for that license that Sam was talking about. So that way that artist is getting the money, then you can use that music however you want in their show. So that's something to also check out if you're feeling a little wary about talking to anyone or feel like there's no one to talk to. That's certainly something you can check out just by doing a quick internet search on podcast music packs. All right. So, working with a composer when you're a director or writer, as we're kind of talking about this whole time, the key to this is to collaborate and communicate. Right, Sam? We communicate pretty well, I'd say.
Definitely.
Yeah, it certainly helps that Sam and I both have a background in music. I don't think any creator of a show or co-creator of a show should feel that if they don't know music well, that they would have to be the music editor. That just happens to be something that works for us because Sam and I have been making music together for a really long time and just kind of understand each other's musical language. But for most people that are a director, writer, creator that are working with a musician, you're not going to know all the ins and outs, the same as most musicians are not going to know all the technical terms of being a director or a writer even. So there are a lot of similarities though, because we're all artists. And what we were kind of talking about earlier with the tone of the show, and you can go further in by looking at the tone of every episode if you're getting down on the series level. And what we're trying to do is find ways to communicate about how we want to support the scene. So generally, your creator, writer, or director is going to know the ins and outs of the story, maybe how it relates to the series. So most of the time, I'm kind of guiding Sam as we'll walk through a script and look at each scene and kind of figure out how we want to reinforce it with the music. And we'll talk a little bit soon about the different levels of music that you can put into your show. But the main thing is that you want to find a good way to communicate about, how you're going to convey some like moods of characters, or like, is this like a tense scene? Because the music is there in a similar way of a visual thing to help the audience feel the same way as your characters.
Definitely. And as a composer, um, it's essential to listen to the director's vision and realize that what you're doing is you're adding like furniture and wall furnishings into the room. You're painting the wallpaper as the music. You're almost like you're the lighting. You're the cinematographer in a way. Um, you have to collaborate with what's in the script, and then listen to the director's vision for each of these moods and characters' feelings that are peaking or bottoming out. And um, really, kind of the first rule is: do I need to be here? Does music need to be here? And from there, everything kind of flows out. Erik and I spent, and he already alluded to this, and we'll get to our numbering system here in a second. Um, but we spent the first 5 episodes of Marsfall season 1 really not knowing exactly how to talk to each other about the the levels of music that were required for each of these scenes. So there was a lot of collaboration through the first 5 episodes of like, how does this how does this work? First of all, and then like what works best. Recognizing that certain things that we did were to our eyes and ears and minds successful, and some things were not as successful, and so we learned from that, and it kind of it helped us create this language that Erik was talking about before. That even though we were able to communicate about music, this was a deeper communication about the collaborative art that is podcasting, because it's so many hats that you all have to wear, and it's so many different things that we all have to do as podcasters. It's the ultimate collaborative art form, as far as I'm concerned. It and film, they're like the two. So yeah, when we get to that list, we'll talk even more about the numbering system and what kind of each of these musics mean to us.
Yeah. We really cannot emphasize it enough that you must collaborate and communicate when working in any of these mediums. And the other thing too is that this can also be a collaboration beyond just the creator and a musician, or co-creators working together like Sam and I. But another one of our co-creators is our sound engineer, and lots of you that are sound engineers out there also, are composers too. I mean, those worlds are very tied together. But if you're working with a different sound engineer, in our case, we have 2 engineers, and then you have a different person as a composer. That's 3 different people. I'm kind of like making sure that they are all communicating together and collaborating together. So building off what we were talking about earlier, it's really key that when you're in charge of like the general direction of the story, whether that's you by yourself or you working with other co-creators, that very well where all the things are falling within that scene, so like whether to emphasize something or whether to to back away from it, because our number one thing that always works for us is that we're going to yield to the story and we're going to yield to making the best art. So if that means we need to back away from music because that's pulling away from dialogue, or if that means we need to strip away some of the sound effects because we'd rather have some of the music speak through here. There's a lot of different ways that you want to massage that. But I think if you're always thinking about what is the tone I want to do and how do I want to convey that to the audience, you're going to find a really good way to work music in to support any sound design that has already been built by an engineer, or maybe by you as the creator and you're looking to expand. So, and that's really key, right, Sam, to a composer, to make sure they leave space or work with the sound engineer, right?
Absolutely. I think that's a key relationship because, like I was saying earlier, um, music can become either uh, the either you don't notice it and it's perfect, or you notice it and it's wrong. Um, those things that it is like wallpaper, right? It's either perfect for the room or it clashes horribly with something. So sound effects, that's our most important thing. That's what's conveying the whole world. That's what's giving so much of your audience the idea when they're closing their minds of the entire setting that they themselves as the character get to live the soundscape. So in no realm is, in my opinion, the composing and of music superseding sound effects. It all has to interweave and work really well together. And like Erik was saying, sometimes you have to yield from one to another. But if we can all agree that the art is ultimate and our egos all come second, then it it's almost impossible to 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 fail at communicating if you can all agree that the art's first, and
Yeah.
anything else needs to just serve the art.
And the more levels of the whole production process you can connect on with, key people like your engineer, like your, maybe your main character actor and your composer. I mean, the way Sam and I work with our other two co-creators is that, we are deep in the scripts revising stuff, and then we're listening to just the dialogue passes several times. So we're already thinking like, okay, where are sound effects going to go in? Where will the music start to go in? Then we get the sound effects pass, and that's a whole new spot. And all of a sudden, we're like, wow, things are a lot thicker here, even though this is an emotional scene. Maybe a machine is like, crushing a person. So you have to make space for there. Maybe music doesn't belong there. But, then the composer might be like, the music, leading up to that point might help ramp up the tension. So then once we have like locked in our sound effects pass, then Sam is doing the music. And I do say this to all directors and, creators that are working with a musician. And, certainly if you don't know all the technical terms, just definitely keep an open mind toward what your composer is bringing to you. I mean, hopefully you've heard a little bit of what their music sounds like, so you know generally what you're going to get. But take a chance and trust them. Like if something sounds wrong, like Sam was saying with wallpaper, like it'll be very wrong. But if something sounds a little different to you, I mean, I can certainly recall many times in our music passes that Sam will put music to a scene, and it might, without changing the tone, just might change the way that I feel about like certain beats within it in the character conversation. And it's making me realize that he's, hearing things that in the voice that he's highlighting, that stuff that I didn't even notice. And yeah, we've definitely, debated some things, and certainly, not everything has been a compromise. It's been like, no, you got to trust me. But again, that comes from what we're looking at right now, collaborate and communicate. And so, be sure you're working with someone you trust if you're going to go that deep on partnering with someone else on making your show. So here is the numeric scoring system that Sam and I worked out, and Sam was alluding to earlier.
I'm sure that plenty of film composers and other composers have dealt with something similar to this, or at least set up some sort of tracking system for themselves as to how to keep track of all of the emotional peaks and valleys of music. Um, for Erik and my ease of communication, it was his idea actually. He kind of noticed after we hit our mid-season break in the first season, and spent, I don't know how long you spent, Erik, re-listening to some of the episodes, but you kind of recognized that there was a more or less like pillar categories that fit, like, oh, well, this is kind of like, we could call this all this, we could call this all this. So he sort of like assigned a whole bunch of the tunes in Marsfall to these 1 through 6 um, numbers here, but they can be applied to anything. So obviously, the first and foremost, which we talked about earlier, is silence. That has to be your default. You have to think, could this not have music here? Because, I mean, again, it's an added layer of audio. You want to also not give the sound effects the sort of supremacy, but also the actors and their amazing performances that they've given, right? You want to be able to hear that. So um, a lot of times it's just, okay, we definitely don't want anything here to get in the way of anything. If anything, it's going to be too atmospheric. It'll be something in the background, some sort of like low hum or low kind of drone, or kind of a wavy moan of sound in the background, but it's not going to be something that's in your face at all. And it might not even be noticeable unless literally all the actors said nothing and all we could hear was just like a faucet dripping or something.
Which could be what you want. That could be the right thing.
Yep. And then 3, supportive. Supportive to me means the music maps the rise and fall of the action in the scene. So if the action of the scene, the 2 characters are arguing, and everything's getting more and more intense, and it's rising, then the music is also going to go with that, and it's going to follow it, kind of like parallel lines. Cinematic to me, 4 here means that the music is really like a showcase during some other epic sequence that's happening. So, battle music. We already talked about Gladiator a little bit, but some music that's happening that's ramping up the overall tension of the scene. Erik, any cinematic shots come to mind? Great popular fiction.
Oh yeah, I mean there are so many things. One of my favorites, and I know our host will know this moment, but one of the early shots in Jurassic Park where you get to finally see the Brachiosauruses down at the lagoon, and you get that beautiful musical score as you see the actors taking it all in. I feel like that is different from a battle, but yet another way to enhance it, as we say, cinematically, even though we're working within the podcast medium. And I think, yeah, this is like a good point in our numerical scoring system, where number 4 is kind of where we start to cross that bridge to where music is becoming as important as everything else going on. And then that brings us, up to number 5, where we say featured. And that's like a moment where the music means the most to us. And these are like really, really, really special moments in a show, because it's where there might be some sound effects, there might even be talking, but it's where you want the music to be like carrying the emotional weight of the script. And going back to what we were talking about earlier, as a director and writer, that's whoever is going to be your primary person working with the musician, it's really going to be your job when you're sculpting the story early on, not to sit there and write in like, oh, we're going to cue music here. I don't always approach it that way unless it's like very strong, but you might think about, as you're shaping an emotional arc for some characters in an episode, that wow, at the end of this scene, like we're going to have a big reveal, or like they're going to reach a new location, and there might be some sound effects, but like this is a time that like I might point out to the composer and be like, hey, if you really want to like flex your music muscles here, so to say awkwardly, for 30 seconds or so, like this is like a really good peak moment. And it's the same way that you would guide an actor when working on it, right? You'd say like, out of these 2 pages, when you get 3/4 the way down the second page, boom, like this is the key nugget of the argument. And you want to think about music that way a little bit too, like, oh, this is like a key reveal. Like, is it going to be told through dialogue? Is it going to be told through sound effects? Or is it going to be told with music? And that really brings us up to number 6, which is almost kind of a subcategory of 5. But this is where it's strictly just music kind of setting something up. And we were surprised that the more we wrote the show, and certainly like in our second season, almost every single episode, we decided that a transition between 2 scenes, particularly ones that, passed more than just real time in listening. So maybe a few hours, maybe even a few souls or days for those of you still on Earth, that you would have this music that could serve as a total transition. And it also gives your sound engineers a break, and also gives your audience the time to almost like soothe into another world and kind of get a little palate cleanse, or maybe get an idea of what's coming up. And we certainly had a lot of our fans really like our transitions, and maybe when we start a scene that might have some sparse sound effects setting it up, allowing the music to roll for 10 to 15 seconds before anyone starts talking can be a real treat that we just really enjoy doing to our show. And we think that it just gives a more exciting experience for the audience, as long as you're careful about not ever making it too cluttered. And sometimes that happens, but we just try to minimize those moments. Yeah, I think we're kind of, getting to the point where we're going to wrap up, unless I'm missing anything, about the numeric system, Sam, that I'm glossing over.
No, I don't think so.
Okay, cool. So yeah, we just want to say that kind of our key thing, aside from collaborate and communicate, is that music just makes everything better. Going back to earlier in the talk where Sam said we're already down a sense when we're in podcasting. I'll never forget that because that's kind of the way he pitched why we should have a more involved, almost like full score for our show. And yeah, if you're working with someone, who's just as talented as you, but they're a musician, like they're working at the peak of their field, they're definitely going to make your show better. Like we can't stress enough how much fun it is to work with a whole nother art medium that totally fits into this medium that we are all creating in the field of fiction podcasting. And props to so many of you out there too. When we started doing these talks a few years ago, we knew of very few shows that were using music beyond a main theme, and some shows didn't even have that. And again, there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, some of my favorite shows have no music at all, whether they're fiction or nonfiction. But we have to say that more and more new shows coming out, particularly indie shows, which is really exciting for us, are using music. And I just want to say, thanks to all the composers out there that are working hard, and thanks to all the creators, directors, writers that are taking a chance on working with a musician, or that you have gone, done a little extra work, on top of your crazy busy schedule to, maybe download some music or ask a friend if you could use their music. So we just hope to keep seeing more and more people doing this. And even if you're in like the 5th season of writing your show, give it a shot. Try just see if you can find one song to maybe put even over your credits. It's fun. You might make a really good connection, and they might have some cool ideas for more music for the rest of your show.
Definitely. I can't sum it up any better than that. So it was a real pleasure to be able to talk to you all today. This has been fantastic. And I just, thanks for having us here, Sarah. Thank you so much. Yeah, Sarah, if you have any questions from anybody, or if you have any questions for us, if you'd like to.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we've had sort of questions rolling in, and I've been taking notes, and I'm just going to go back up here and see if I can do the thing where you post the question here on the screen. Okay. So our first question is from Pete Berry. Oh, wait, no, you know what? Oh, wait, sorry, second.
Really good question, though. So
it's a really good question, I promise. We got so many of them, and it's so wonderful. Okay, here we go. So Pete Berry says, "Hey guys, Pete Berry, co-creator and sole music creator of Mission Rejected here with a question. I find myself able to forgive some of our low quality voice actor issues at times, but I find myself much more critical of the flaws or lack of pro sound in my music. How forgiving do you think, or how forgiving do you find that audiences are with original music on podcasts?"
Well, I hope they're really forgiving, because when I first started our show with Marsfall, it's the first thing that I'd written since high school. And the first couple episodes, I know we're a little rough. We're not definitely my best material, but I think that we built part of that into the writing of the show. I think there are ways to work around that. Also, the restrictions under which we were recording. My God, season I recorded. Are you ready for this? I recorded 4 movements of Bach on my iPhone because I couldn't. There was no other way for me to do it in Michigan and send it to get it in on time. So I recorded our Bach on the iPhone. We just slapped a little sound effects filter on top of it to sound so that there was an extra reason why it didn't sound good. But I think it's okay. I think it's totally okay. There's ways that you can work around it that I think you could probably build into your script too. especially if it's a sci-fi or if it's something, any sort of sci-fi fantasy realm, anything, you can do a workaround to give it some kind of magical or scientific reason that it doesn't sound quote unquote as good, or the quality isn't as high as maybe you'd want it. But yeah, I hope people are really forgiving. But you grow also with the size of your show and with what you can afford to do. You know, nobody's asking you to be, a sound mixer for HBO the first time that you put out a podcast. You know, nobody's asking you to be Morgan Freeman the first time that you do a voiceover. You know, so like nobody should ask me to be Yo-Yo Ma as a cellist, and nobody should ask me to be Hans Zimmer as a composer right away. So.
Yeah.
Do you feel like audiences are pretty forgiving with that?
I think so. I feel like I think if you have like good reasons for the way that things are being generated the way they are, then there's like a mountain of sympathy that you could give an artist. You're like, oh yeah, he's working from his bath with one microphone. Of course, you know, like he's a genius, or you're a genius, you know, like of course, like. So I think people are generally very forgiving, and I think that the indie audio world is great. So, oh, you're asking you to be those things, you to be forgiving to yourself. Yeah, I'm struggling real hard with being forgiving to myself too, and I'm sorry that I can't give a better answer than he and
forgive yourself. Yeah.
I don't know.
It's hard. It's really hard to forgive yourself, especially when it sounds like, you know, you're one of the primary overall creators or the sole creator. And yeah, like we have to go easy on ourselves. You would go easy on your friend, right? I mean, you go easy on people you love, and like we should love ourselves. And I always have to remind myself, Sam reminds me, my wife reminds me way more than I remind myself all that. But just saying it out loud now is yet another reminder to me. So yeah, like focus on your content, focus on making the art. Technical things come and go. You know, technical things can sometimes be completely out of our control, but you know, let your voice speak. And if, you know, people aren't into it, then whatever, because I guarantee you a lot more people are into it.
Yeah. Oh, that's such a fantastic answer.
So sorry. One last thing. Sometimes the creative workaround that you'll find is like why this audio quality is not so great actually leads to better creative solutions for things down the line too. So you might discover some like, oh, this is actually a plot point for my second season now. So it could unlock something.
I love that. There's like a utilitarian sort of mindset there. I like that.
No, podcasters know nothing about that approach, Sarah.
We do the best with what we have. I have some more questions here. Let's see. How do you decide when to supplement an actor's performance with music and when to back off and let that actor's performance shine on its own?
Yeah. So for Sam and I mean, like I said earlier, you know, we're in on the different levels of production. You know, as a writer, I know when I've written something really juicy. So I'm automatically gonna be like, yeah, we're gonna have any music here. But you know, surprisingly, a lot of those times, once we hear the actor's performance, it might make the whole scene kind of feel very different. You know, we recommend kind of coming up with something like our numerical scoring system, just a way to, you know, not only communicate, but also to analyze yourself and kind of like see if you can feel where something would fall, because that's kind of what it comes down to, is a gut feeling. And, you know, you just kind of know when it's right to put it in and know when it's not. And from a technical standpoint, you know, if you're like, well, I don't want to go on gut feelings, give me the science. And I'm like, all right, I'm a sci-fi writer, I'll give you the science. So, you know, if something sounds too busy, you know, it's not the right time. You know, maybe that means some of the music needs to be taken away, maybe not all of it, or like maybe it's a sound effects thing. But if it's too busy, you know, if it's more Star Wars prequels than more Star Wars original trilogy, you might have a problem. So you really want to you want to be sure that you can always give the space for what's going on. And that also applies to, like, if there's part where you hear an actor talking and, you know, regardless of how much sound effects are there, maybe it just feels like it's lacking something. And maybe, you know, spending a few hours just to add, you know, something very subtle, like we were talking about, that atmospheric music, it might be a drone or just a beat, might be the thing that just kind of elevates that up a little bit and just makes it feel more complete. So it's all about little micro nudges, kind of massaging it into the right place. And I think more than any other pass, including like dialogue or sound effects listens, that the music pass is a lot more about, like, does this really feel right? And little tweaks can make a huge difference. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I have another question here on transitions. And the question is just literally transitions with a question mark at the end. So if you can just talk a little bit about transitions, question mark?
Yes. Earlier when I was talking about transitions, sometimes, you know, when we move from scene to scene, especially if it's like a big topic change or a big setting change, using a little bit of music, and maybe that's just like, you know, a snippet of your main theme, can just be something that clears the palette. And that's the main thing we want to do. It's, you know, you think of it when you, for watching Law and Order SVU, and they're going to show like the shot of the courthouse, you know, after we see the shot of like the perp's apartment and that whole scene. So it's like, all right, now I know like where I am. I've kind of like cleared the previous scene out of there, and like, all right, we're going to get into the courthouse stuff. I'm going to see the DA. So like, you know, maybe like in a transition, I might hear a little bit of a music theme that might be tied to a character or a certain setting coming up. And that's where like you can do something like really juicy for your audience. One of the things I love that Sam did in our second season, in our Jeff episode, the first Jeff episode we've done, maybe more to come. And we had this part where they got on the bus, and Sam took Jeff's theme song and turned it into this like fun bus ride groove, like funk EDM, cool thing. And just like really made it just like this solid groove that we were like, all right, we're going to run with this for like a minute or two. And it helped because right before that was like a big commotion. There were a lot of people, a lot of voices going on. And using that transition, Sam kind of brought it up to the peak and then kind of eased down into our next scene, which was a little more chill, was much more focused on Jeff talking, you know, one of his favorite things to do. And so that's why, you know, we talk about transition, always look at it as like an opportunity. And it is definitely not a guarantee. Like I said, I think in our first season, we had a couple episodes that had one transition in them. And then our second season, you know, hardly more than one in an episode here and there. So, you know, it's just like that little bonus. If it feels right and if you need a palate cleanser, that's when I'd recommend it. So. But obviously,
Palate
Sam,
cleanser
I
is
just
such a
want
good
it all
way.
the time to, you know, just show off all your skills. So, you know, let the composer fan as well.
I think it all depends on the tone of the show. Again, getting back to that, it's like, what is your show about? If it's a Western, you know, Western fantasy mystery, then there should there be a button in between, you know, acts or transitions within the show? And should it be the same as an underwater sea exploratory sci-fi thing? You know, maybe not.
Yeah.
Who knows? But I
Maybe
think
it's a comedy and you have a couple people just like getting in a car to go down the street. You know, you just want like a 10-second kind of little pop song snippet sounding thing just to be like, oh yeah, they're in the car, like listen to the radio. You know?
so. Experimentation really is what it comes down to. I would just try a bunch of different things. You know, we tried so many things, and that's the beauty of all of these art forms, is that the majority of it is just build, 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 and then shave it away, shave it away, shave it away, shave it away, shave it away.
Yes.
Finally find what it is that is good about it all, right? I think that's how we could talk about writing. We could talk about art of any movie. So yeah, just experiment.
Oh, Sarah, you're muted. There.
Yeah, there was some. I live by like train tracks and a hospital and an Air Force base, and so there's just loudness outside all the time. Do you guys have time for another question or two?
Yeah,
definitely.
Not to like, I kind of want to like totally monopolize your time here.
I mean,
Let's see.
yeah,
We
I've
have
been
another.
just kind of chilling at home a lot lately. You know, I've got some time.
I love it. So Erik is asking, not you, but a different Erik is asking, do you wing it with music, finding what works where, or do you follow a director spreadsheet formula, or
Yeah, it's a little bit of both. And it's always changing. It's so funny. Like I can't stress enough that when, you know, if you're a writer, I don't know what you do specifically, Erik, but lots of times it can be very precision. Like we're saying, we're stripping away stuff, and maybe that, you know, happens over many months, you know, to just kind of like craft this raw material. And then you know, sound effects generally, you know, an engineer, and if you're, you know, guiding your engineer, like it's very precise. It's like, you know, at 40, you know, 3 seconds into the third, you know, minute, like we need this alarm, boom, like it's got to be right there. And then with music, you can certainly approach it that way, but I found that like when getting, you know, Sam's music, some things might sound a little different than I imagined it, but you know, it's just kind of about there like massaging it more and more, and it's not like I mean, sometimes as musician to musician, we can talk and be like, oh, you know, let's like change a note at a very specific time code. But in general, the way I'm communicating with him is like, can we make this feel like a little lighter? Like, can we make this, you know, more uplifting? Or like, can we maybe emphasize darker here? Like, see when, you know, Chip says this sentence and he's all bummed out. Like, can we get like a little more bummed out? And, you know, that's kind of like directory speak I'll use to Sam. But Sam, as like the composer, interpreting that, you know, talking about that, what do you think?
Yeah, I think again it's this communication thing, because even though the scripts that we give to our actors are pressed and printed and ready to go, right? That's always like the third or 12th or 400th edit. It's never the first thing. So it's the same thing with our sound effects pass, right? We're gonna, and actually the dialogue pass too. So we're gonna hear the dialogue pass, and we're gonna say, I think that like response needs to be nudged forward another half second, right? And then we get the sound effects, and we're just as picky about that. And so it takes a little bit of massaging back and forth. The music coming into it, I think there should be a pre-plan a little bit. There should be an outline. Your composer and director need to communicate about those things that we talked about earlier, the general tone of the show and the general tone of the episode and the general tone of each scene within the episode, and whichever character is the rise and fall. So, or the most prominent character there. To that end, once you figure that out, then the composer can use all of whatever their language is to describe that in their head. Then the director will use whatever language they use to describe that, whatever that they're thinking of. And then you got to mesh those things. And then you need like 2 or 3 or 4 or 12 edits, you know, many edits as are necessary to get it to exactly how you want as the showrunner or as the director or as the composer you want it to end up being. So I think that's a really, really good question. I think winging it in any stage of a podcast production does draw in the possibility of screwing things up a little bit more and making things drag out a little bit longer. But I think that you need the spirit of improvisation there. I think you have to be able, because otherwise it gets too rigid and then you don't want to mess with it. Let it kind of like, let the art be this amorphous thing until it's set in stone, printed. We're sending it out on our RSS feed. That's it.
Yeah.
There's something else really quick. Sorry, I just want to comment on one more thing.
No, please, yeah. Plus, I've got like 10 sirens going by, so.
Oh, okay. Perfect timing. So there's also this kind of speed factor that we didn't really talk about. And as a writer, you know, I love that I'm pre-production. So, you know, you guys can't do anything until I do my stuff. So I've got like loads of time to like write the script and, you know, die many existential like crises deaths over and over again as we write the script. And, that might take a much longer amount of time. Then, when you get in there, you're working with actors, whether you're doing a live recording or you're receiving takes and editing it together. There's a bit more of a time thing, but you're also like kind of coaching the actors. I mean, we do 2 to 3 takes minimum of every scene, and you're working with them in real time. But, they've had some time to prepare scripts, and they're also, working off of a form. When you get later to your sound effects people, usually they're working from a palette, and you've agreed to like kind of a schedule, but this is like the post-production work, and things are kind of moving faster because by this point you probably announced, you've got deadlines, you've got real dates. And then if your musician is different from your sound designer, well, then that's the last piece of the pie. And they have to not only be creating raw art like all you writers out there, but they're also doing it while like a director is kind of directing them the same way as an actor. So imagine if you were like an improv actor that was getting directed in real time for the actors listening, or if you were a writer with someone kind of standing over your shoulder being like, yeah, so, this is due in a week. I know we all have dealt with deadlines, but like, just imagine someone's there like, all right, and I'm just going to like edit you like in real time. And I have to give props to all the composers out there. I mean, it took me, 3 months to write an episode of Marsfall in season 1, and I will never forget. And I know Sam won't forget because I always bring it up, even though he's definitely blacked it out from his permanent memory banks. But for our chapter 3 in the first season, Sam's computer completely crashed and lost everything. And by the way, his schedule, he was writing the music for every episode in a 4 to 5 day window for every episode. But that particular episode, the 3rd episode, he wrote the entire music in 36 hours, and we got that out on the deadline. So to the composer heroes out there for being the last line of defense, thank you. And also to all you directors and other people that work with the composers out there, be nice to them, and never treat music as like an afterthought. Not only just in considering putting it in your show, but if you do, same thing goes with like how you respect any co-writers, any actors that you're working with, and they know how to work well under pressure. But like be there for when they need to freak out and give them the space to work in.
What were you gonna say?
Oh my gosh, you're amazing. Wow. Let's see. I've got one final question here. Is that good?
Yeah, go for it.
All right. It says, so my upcoming audio drama has a main theme and outro track and about 8 interchangeable scene transitions and a few background tracks. Is this too limited of a soundtrack? And what are the pros and cons of recycling tracks throughout a series?
Okay, so that's a really, really good question. I would kind of consider this like how we would think about the evolution of soundtracks in video games. Let's talk about that for a second, because I'm super, super interested in writing music for video games, and this is like a huge passion project for me. But I think that if we're talking about the music coming back and being able to hear kind of the same recurring themes, I think that's fantastic, because first, giving a motive to like an emotion or a character or a certain place, giving a musical motive, assigning that to that place will only serve to help your audience to draw them back to that same spot, to go, oh, it's that character. Oh, it's that person's love theme. Oh, it's that weird random cave on that planet. Oh my gosh, something scary is about to happen. So you can convey all these emotions without anything other than you having repeated this music a number of times to kind of give this sense of, oh, this is when we're going to hear this. Oh, this is when this is going to play. Now, I can't specifically state like 8 tracks is too little to recycle over and over again, because I don't know how you're structuring your show. I don't know where you would be dropping them and how often you'd be hearing these tracks. But I kind of would think that it would be something similar to like I really want to write 8-bit video game music, and I think that stuff's being written right now for that. it's like a smaller sample size that you're working with, and so you're hearing the same music over and over again because that's all that you can do. I think if that's the restraints and the constraints that you have, that's all that you can do. And so work with it and massage it and make it as beautiful as possible, because there's incredible indie games that are being made right now with incredible like MIDI soundtracks that have like nothing more than that. And I think it's really up to you, the creator, to just make that as seamless of a transition, or as, you know, if you start to feel, I know we all get in our heads like, okay, I've heard this episode 400 times yet and it's not out yet, you know, and I can't tell if I know if this is good or not anymore because I've heard it too often. You know, we can get into our heads a lot about that. Don't necessarily go down that place too much, but notice, maybe like play it for a couple of friends or people that you really, really respect, whose opinions you really respect and trust, and see if they feel the same, especially if they're a musician, especially if they're a creative. If they have any background whatsoever in that, then I think if you can trust them to give you a real honest answer, then it's valuable time and it's valuable to listen to. But other than that, I think having an introduction and an outro is fantastic, because it just brings everybody's ears back to that show. I know that show because I've heard that intro so many times. You know, like, even for as much as we all hate it now, anytime that anybody from here until, you know, all of us millennials are gone, anytime somebody says Game of Thrones, you're gonna hear the cello in your head. You know, you're gonna hear those themes in your head. Anytime somebody just throws a random, you know, mega famous theme at you, it's gonna bring back that entire show. You're gonna start reliving all your favorite memories of that show. So having that attached already to your podcast, I think, is wonderful. Good.
And it's good. I see someone even said, like, I've only got two pieces of music that I use. You know, even if it's just your main theme and credit music, and maybe even if they're very similar. I mean, just the fact that you're constantly having this level of association, you know, that your audience can access. You know, there are many shows that I love dearly that, you know, only have a main theme, but I love the main theme and I know what I'm going to get when I hear that theme. When I see the logo of that show, you know, it makes me think of the theme. You know, and yeah, our show, Sam has composed a lot of through music, but, you know, I know like a web series we worked on recently, you know, they just had you make a theme primarily, and like, man, every time, you know, I think of that web series, I hear the theme in my head. So it's just like funny how even just one or two, you know, cool pieces of music, and even if they're very similar, can be super effective. So it's not really a quantity thing. It's all about quality and using that to like just help make a connection with your audience.
Definitely.
I love it. I love it.
Cool.
Oh my gosh. Let's see. Well, we've got some people needing to go. I've got some people saying thank you so much, Erik and Sam. And I want to echo this. This is from Pete from Mission Rejected. Says, you guys are awesome. Thanks so much for doing this. This is really great stuff. I love this. I love that you are willing to come on and talk with us about these things that you are such experts about. I just really appreciate you being here. So thank you.
Of course. Thank you so much for having us, Sarah. And thank you all for coming to listen to us. I know, you know, this isn't the most broad topic, but we hope no matter if, you know, you're just starting out making a podcast, or if you're working with Hans Zimmer, that hopefully you got a little bit of something out of this, or, you know, at least had some fun tuning in.
Yeah. Thanks.
Now everybody go home or, you know, go turn this off and go listen to a good piece of music and treat yourself for 3 to 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Oh, treat yourself. Oh, well, thank you guys again so much for your time and your energy and your talents. Make sure you listen to Marsfall. If you haven't already, it's a fantastic audio drama. The characters are compelling. It's beautifully written. It's obviously beautifully scored. Just go check them out. I think they're pretty much everywhere. iTunes. I shouldn't even say iTunes anymore. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all of the good places.
Yeah, and you can definitely find us on our website that we had up at the end of that slide, but marsfallpodcast.com can connect you to our episodes directly or your favorite podcatcher. But yeah, if you give us a listen, feel free if you want to reach out to us, let us know what you think, and we hope you enjoy.
Yeah, make them some fan art, give them some 5-star reviews, show them some love.
Yeah, do all the things that Sarah says to do. Always.
Wonderful. Well, we all love and appreciate you. Thank you so much again. And I'm going to go ahead and end the stream, but you guys go listen to some great music.
Yeah. Great seeing you.
Great to see you.
You too. Bye for now.
Bye, everyone.